Greetings everyone and welcome back to Sanford Heart. I'm Ed West and we're here today with a very special person, Angela Cole. Angela is a practicing attorney here in Midland. She grew up in Sanford. She has strong ties to the Sanford community. She's been a tremendous resource for flood survivors and others since the flood occurred. Perhaps you've seen some of her posts on Facebook. She's done a lot of projects, and it's really an honor to be here today to talk with her and highlight some of those projects, and I think give her some of the recognition that she maybe doesn't want, but we know that she deserves. Teresa Quintana, the founder of the Facebook Strong page, described her in this way. She said, "Angela's strength is her heart. That is what drives her ambition and compassion in helping others. She is an earth angel." And she told me to tell you that on camera. I know it may be, I hope it's not embarrassing to you.
No, thank you so much.
So your name conveys something real here, I think. Dolores Porty, the Sanford Village president, described Angela as someone who never gives up and continues to work really hard. She gives a high level of support to her community. So we're really honored to have Angela with us, and we thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us. When I spoke to you in our prior interview, I sensed that you had a lot of compassion for kids. And I know your latest project is designed to put more books in the hands of children, correct?
Correct.
So can you tell us about that?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I definitely have a passion around helping children. So the latest project that I'm working on with Christy McDonald is a project where we're collecting children's books to give them to grandparents and children who lost their books in the flood, to the floodwaters. And the collection has been going on for about a month now, and people were able to drop off books in 5 locations. We picked 2 in Midland and 3 in Sanford. So people were able to drop off books at the Sanford Hardware, Cole's Wrecker Service, Meridian High School, and then also at the Midland Recyclers and Coldwell Banker in Midland. We also received donations, and at this point we have received over $9,000 in donations. $2,000 of that came from the community, and $4,000 of it came from a grant from the Kawasi Kiwanis Foundation, and the other $3,000 came from a grant from the Midland Noon Rotary Community Needs Committee. So we raised $9,000 in books. We've received over 2 tons of books, literally, I'm not even kidding. And so we're super excited. We're going to be giving the books. Well, first let me back up just for a sec. The families and the grandparents were able to sign up either online through a form that the leadership class at Meridian with their advisor Sarah Largess developed, or they were able to contact Christy or I to sign up. And we have scheduled on April 3rd an event where we're going to provide the books or gift cards to the families.
It's an incredible endeavor, and what's the ultimate goal here?
Well, the ultimate goal is, as we were working with families, I was always looking for a way, how could we help the children? But for the last 10 months, we've really focused on providing, helping them rebuild, get back into their homes, help with basic needs. And there have been opportunities. We took some time out at Christmas to do gifts and have some fun. But as we've been working with the families, I've noticed that they are regularly going to the library, but they're not rebuilding their book collections because they don't have the money. They're spending most of their money on rebuilding efforts. So the ultimate goal here is to bring joy of reading back into the home, bring the books to stay into the home, because it's really important. Research shows, I'm a huge child advocate, anyone who knows that about me. Research shows that children who have access to books have higher literacy outcomes and reading skills.
Where do you think the passion for helping kids comes from?
Well, so helping others in general is one of my things. I think anyone who helps people, it probably comes from a servant's heart or or a place where they want to help people. I've always had that passion, but as I've done that, I've found that the more I help other people, whether it's children or adults or seniors, the more I help people, the more happier I actually feel. So it's selfish from a perspective, because helping others, it helps life have more meaning, and it brings more of a well-being for me. It's actually an addiction. The more I do it, the more I want to do it.
So this is your purpose. This is part of your hardwired.
It really is. It really is. And I have a special spot in my heart for children in general. And so whenever I see an opportunity to better the life of a child, I always try to do that if I can.
It's great. It's great. You had told me that you've provided, or you and your associates have provided over 5,000 hot meals. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
That's overwhelming. Tell us about how that came about.
It didn't start out to be 5,000 hot meals, but we certainly did start out to try to help. In the very beginning, after the floodwaters came through and left the devastation that it did, many of us jumped right in, and we were helping get meals to the volunteers and to the people working on their homes. For the first couple months, we had hot organizations that set up hot meals and lunches that the folks could go pick up. But we noticed that the homeowners and the volunteers weren't leaving where they were working from to get the meals. So many of us would go get the meals and take them to the homes for the volunteers and the residents. Well, after about 2 months, we discovered, most of our free places that were providing had left. I mean, rightfully so. It had been a couple months, and they had to get back to what they were doing. So we were providing meals ourselves. We were coming into Midland, because there weren't really a lot of places in Sanford where we could pick up food, and we would purchase it ourselves and bring it back. At one point, one of the churches that was working with me to help identify families, they were asking me for help to identify families they could help. I reached out to them and asked, they were always looking for a community outreach aspect of their volunteerism. So I suggested maybe they set up a hot meal, like a pop-up hot meal. So they did, and it went so well that then I worked with some of the other people that we had collaborated with the hot meals, delivering the hot meals, and coordinated so that we set up hot meals once a week for folks to come and pick up. We start off with once a week, 100 to 150 meals, and then that quickly grew to twice a week to about 200 meals on average. One time we did 300 meals for Thanksgiving meal. But when we first started, we thought we would just do it through the summer while volunteers were there and while people were rebuilding. But we quickly learned that the rebuild process was going to take a lot longer than the summer, and the need for the meals didn't actually subside. And the whole while, the community they came out in droves to help us. We had volunteers, we had donations, and they just rallied around us. And so people often ask me when they would show up to volunteer at these meals, who's leading this? And I would laugh and say, nobody is really leading it. It was the community driving it. They helped. We had organizations that committed to 6 people every week to help us. We had individuals from, like 1 or 2 individuals from many organizations helping. The community was donating the food, the money, and we would say we were going to stop after the end of this month or that month, but it just kept going. And so before we were done, we had served over 5,000 meals. It was incredible. The collaboration was incredible.
Can you point out some of the main people who were involved in that besides you?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There were so many. I would really like to not miss anybody. But we had, boy, this is going to be tough. Well, first we coordinated with Christy McDonald, who she was delivering meals on Tuesday nights. So we coordinated with her to find out if she needed more help on Tuesday nights or if she'd like us to pick another night. Because she'd been delivering to 40 families on Tuesday nights for many, many months at that time. And so we coordinated with her, and then I know there was a representative from Trinity Lutheran Church, The Sanford United Methodist Church helped several times with desserts and providing. The Islamic Center of Midland and the Interfaith Group, I think of Midland is what they're called as well. They helped tremendously, both of those organizations. Were there almost every week, and they had at least 1 or 2 representatives each time. And they also coordinated the financial part of the project too. They were the fiduciary. There were so many people, I would really hate to miss somebody because
It's a tough question.
Well, I once counted, and we had over 165 organizations and over 100 different volunteers on that project. So I would really not want to miss somebody because we had so many, neighbors and friends.
I know you're not a person who likes to blow your own horn, but can you tell us about some of the other projects or some of the things you've done in the community?
Yeah, I've been involved in a lot of little and big ways. Some are more loudly recognized and some are very quiet. But I've done a little bit of everything from day one, and I appreciate that you recognize that it's hard to talk about.
Well, you told me that you provided some direct assistance. You've helped people directly with, household items. And you've also told me that you have provided legal services to folks.
Yeah, I've done everything from delivering hot meals on holidays. Also during Amanda Astor and I would take turns, and she'd deliver one day, I'd deliver the next day. I did a GoFundMe and raised over $20,000 to help the businesses, and then to help them rebuild. I've been on the long-term recovery committee that meets every week to help identify families that are still struggling. I think Teresa Quintana mentioned that in her interview with you. We've helped over 55 families, but most people don't know we're doing that behind the scenes. We're just trying to help identify families and help them get in the home. I've helped with the Midland Business Alliance. I helped with that project with the families and the businesses getting back in their home. I've had lots of clients who were clients before the flood waters came through that needed help, not just in the Sanford, but also the Midland area that lost their legal paperwork. And so we replaced that. There's lots of things like things that I can do in 2 minutes that would take someone else a couple hours, like they were looking for deeds for their home because they needed it for FEMA, things like that. I could probably go on and on, but only because there was such a need and it's been such a long time that there's been a lot of opportunities to help.
It's interesting you view it as an opportunity. It could be a challenge or something, but it's an opportunity for you, and that I think reflects your viewpoint on all this. It's an opportunity.
Yes.
What's been the most rewarding project you've worked on?
So that's difficult to answer because there have been so many, and the most rewarding, they're all rewarding in their own ways. To deliver a hot meal on Thanksgiving with my son to one of the gentlemen we've been working with through the hot meal program, and to see him, his eyes start to cry in the driveway. To take a check to a business owner who, I'm thinking it's not very much when I'm handing them a $2,000 check when I know they've just lost $1 million business. But to have them list all the ways that money can help, or to take somebody, fans to help them blow out their house, or to take lunch to a crew. There's just so many different things that have touched me and have meant something that I couldn't really probably pick one. I loved the hot meal program probably because it had the most, probably because it touched the most people. And then the interaction we had, even though they were coming through the line, we would start at 5 o'clock and people would be lined up sometimes as early as 3:30. We have a whole line of cars. So sometimes while we're waiting for the food to get there, I could talk with individuals. But most weeks, it was just a couple minutes each car. But we developed such relationships. And then as time would go on, they would come up and they'd pull up to get their meal and they'd say, "Oh, hey, I wanted to let you know that I got FEMA approval today." And so it would bring so much joy. We all, people would honk their horns and we'd be so happy. They all have meaning in their own way. I think when you help somebody, it provides meaning. So.
What projects do you see on the horizon?
So after we're done with the book drive, I think Dolores told you this, that when you think one thing is going to end, something else always comes up. Well, I'm still involved in a lot of projects right now. I probably have over 10 things going right now that I'm still working on daily with Sanford and the Midland community and the Gladwin community. But once the Easter project is done, we call the book drive the Easter project because we're also doing Easter baskets for the children and ham basket dinners, all the fixings to make a ham startle dinner for the families. Once that is done on April 3rd, then Christy McDonald actually reached out to me yesterday and asked if I would help her with a golf outing that she's planning as a fundraiser for Sanford and for the other flood, people that were impacted by the flood. And of course I said yes, because I love working with Christy and I love to help. So that's one of the projects that's coming up.
You told me that you grew up, I think you told me you grew up in Sanford. Can you tell us a little about that and maybe how it shaped you?
Sure, absolutely. So when I was about 8 years old, we moved to Sanford from Midland. And in the first few years of living in Sanford, we lived near the lake, and so I really didn't understand what it meant to live in a community such as Sanford. We wouldn't even take our bathing suits off during the day. We would just go swimming 5 or 6 times a day, and different neighbors, and we'd ski and we'd waterboard, and it was so different from where we moved from Midland, because in Midland we had a 40-acre farm, and we still played outside a lot, but all of a sudden we had this lake, and it was like unending opportunity. But I was raised in a single mom home, and my mom worked in Midland. She took us to school in Midland, and we were that typical family that lived by the lake, that hit the expressway and went to Midland for everything, church, everything. And so I didn't really know what the community had to offer until I was a teenager. And when I became a teenager, I wanted to get a job, and the only way I was going to be able to go to my job was to walk or ride my bike. So I decided to try to find a job in the village of Sanford. And so my first job was at Big Eddie's, but then it became Railside later. So I waitressed there, then I went to Lanny's, and at one point I actually waitressed at Red Oak a little bit later. But during my years at Lanny's as a waitress, I became friends with the regular customers, and they became my community. And as I was shopping in the community, going to the post office, the person that I waited on was the postmaster at the post office, or I'd go into the hardware and the owner or the person who waited on me was the person that came in to have soup every afternoon. And so I began to know them, and we built friendships. And I loved working at the restaurant so much because in the afternoon when it was quiet, the regulars would come in and sit at this long table, and I'd hear them tell stories, and I would purposely try to walk over and do a job over by the long table so I could hear the stories, because I just loved hearing them talk. And over time, they became my community and my village. And as I graduated high school and as I got married and had children, they rallied around me. They were my support system, and they were always happy to see us when we came into the businesses. And so I raised my 3 sons in the community, and they went to Meridian schools. They graduated from Meridian. All 3 of them went off to college and received engineer degrees. I mean, who'd figure? I'm a lawyer and they're engineers. So I always tease that they got the other side of their brain that I don't use.
The left brain.
But when they would come home from school, when they were gone to college, the first thing they'd want to do is go to Lanny's for dinner, for lunch, or for breakfast. We had so many birthday parties at Lanny's in town, and when they went off to work in other states, the same thing. First thing they'd want to do is come home and drive around, see what changed, and go to Lanny's or go to one of the local restaurants there. And so it wasn't really truly until I probably had my own children that I realized how important a small town was, and all the charm and all the benefits that it had.
You founded an organization that provides legal services pro bono to needy clients, affordable legal care. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Right. So it's not pro bono, but it's considered low bono. It's a law firm that I started 3 years ago. I started it because all through my legal career, whether I was in law school or working at Dow Corning or at the courthouse or in private practice, people would come to me and ask for a name of a good attorney, someone who did a really good job. But there was always, and they would tell me a little bit about their issue, but then there was always a caveat. It had to be affordable. And I could usually help them identify somebody who handled that area of law, but whether it was going to be affordable was always a difficult situation for me to answer because, I mean, lawyers are expensive, typically. And so I would always try to help them find a free legal resource. There are a lot of free legal sources, but there are income and asset requirements because most of the free legal resources are federally funded. So I finally, after I was in, at one point in my career, I decided that it would make a lot of sense to start up a law firm that provided legal services for people who weren't eligible for free legal services but couldn't afford the cost of a traditional attorney. And so I researched and watched what another firm was doing in Utah for a couple of years, and finally I decided that I understood the model and they had done it long enough that it could become sustainable. So what we do is I started it 3 years ago, and the charge, the hourly rate is based on how many people are in the home and what their family income is. If someone calls and they're not eligible because they don't make enough money, I help them find a legal resource that is free. Or if they make too much money, then I try to help them find an attorney in the area that handles that type of law.
So you were trying to fill a niche, a crack,
Yes,
a gap in this legal services.
Yes, absolutely. There is a huge legal gap for legal access, and the Michigan State Supreme Court recognizes that. They're working on it fervently now, but there's a big gap in services, and so these people who can't afford lawyers, they'll frequently go without legal services. And all through my career, I saw that affecting people, not only in their lives, but then in generations to come for their children as well. And if they could just have access and they could get that need addressed, then their lives could be improved.
Can you tell us how you got interested in the law?
From as early as I can remember, I wanted to be a lawyer. I don't even know why. I just always wanted to be a lawyer, and I started off. I started off to college and was headed to law school, and then I took kind of a detour and got married, had kids, and when I was in my mid-20s, I decided that I really wanted to follow that dream, and so I changed paths again and got back in school and became a lawyer. So I can't really tell you.
I have to ask this question because it seems logical. I've probably been asked it before. Any political plans? Would you ever consider running for office?
That's a good question, and you're right, I have been asked that before. So I absolutely love being a lawyer. The reason that I love being a lawyer is because I can help people and I can use my legal skills. How many people can take their passion and do it at work, right? So I love what I do. The only job, though, that I have loved more than being a lawyer is when I was a magistrate and an attorney referee in the probate court. The reason I loved that job more was because I still got to help people, I got to use my legal skills, but the power that came with that role let me do greater good, if that makes sense. I could help people in a greater way than a regular attorney could do. And so Judge Doreen Allen has said publicly that she's retiring at the end of her term, which is 2024. So I do have plans to run for her position, for the juvenile probate court judge position in 2024. The position will allow me to, if I'm elected, because it is an elected position, it will allow me to continue to bring my passion to work and to help the most vulnerable in our community, because I will helping children and elderly and disabled. But it also, Judge Allen has done such fantastic work in her years on the bench, and it's really important to me that the community continues to receive have access to the programs and all the help that she's provided, and the same level of advocacy and care that she brings to the role now.
I just know that you're you're gonna prevail there.
Thank you so much. I know it's a little premature that you ask and people ask, and there's really no reason to say, you know, to play games and say, you know, maybe stay tuned, because it's a goal that I've had really since I started law school,
Yeah.
that I wanted to be a judge. So
Be a perfect fit too, perfect fit.
thank you so much.
Well, Angela, I want to thank you again for being with us here today. If you like what you saw today, please subscribe to our channel. If you have comments, leave them on Facebook, or you can leave them on the YouTube channel. Or you can email us at the email address that you see on your screen right now. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.